Picture this: a humid, quiet afternoon in Fayetteville, Georgia, on an estate sprawling over 300 acres of prime southern soil. This is the Promised Land, a monument to excess, once built by a heavyweight boxing champion and resurrected by a man who literally put dollar signs in his own name. But on this particular afternoon, the master of this domain, Rick Ross, is not merely lounging poolside with a glass of champagne. Instead, he is holding a stack of legal-size manila folders, and with a single tap on his screen, he goes live. This is not a promotional stream or a calculated PR stunt. This is an unvarnished, raw digital execution. For over 15 years, 50 Cent has operated as the undisputed, bulletproof king of social media trolling. But on this unedited live stream, the chessboard didn't just slide, it was violently flipped. You need to watch this entire breakdown to the very end, because the financial plumbing Rick Ross exposed in this stream doesn't just damage 50 Cent's pride, it completely dismantles the economic myth Curtis Jackson has sold to the world for a decade. With the calm confidence of an auditor who has spent years waiting for the numbers to settle, Ross begins sliding sheets of paper out of those folders. These are verified corporate filings, unredacted deposition transcripts, and bank records from their tangled web of lawsuits. He holds them directly up to the lens of his phone camera, forcing the world to look past the carefully manicured illusion of the G-Unit empire. Ross whispers into the microphone, telling 50 Cent that while the world thinks he bought his massive Shreveport studio, the bank actually owns the brick, and he is just paying the interest. The irony is staggering. 50 Cent, the man who spent years mocking Ross's unpaid taxes and commercial flights, is suddenly exposed as a salaried corporate employee whose television shows and physical studios are heavily leveraged by outside conglomerates. The master troll has been pulled out into the open, his own balance sheets read aloud like a foreclosure notice, proving that in this savage game of performed wealth, the real big boss might have just taken the throne for good. The digital landscape does not merely react to a moment like this. It fractures. Within seconds of Rick Ross tapping the end stream button on his phone, the raw, vertical footage was ripped, sliced, and distributed across the global digital pipeline. 50 Cent's entire empire of online relevance is built on the promptness and brutality of his own strikes, but on this afternoon, he was on the receiving end of a viral velocity he could neither outrun nor easily deflect. TikTok algorithms, YouTube commentary channels, and X timelines were instantly flooded with high-resolution screenshots of the unredacted corporate documents Ross had held up to the camera. Historically, the comment sections under any of 50 Cent's social media posts functioned as a monument to his perceived financial invincibility. If Curtis Jackson mocked an enemy's career, the internet laughed with him. If he pointed out Rick Ross's commercial flight or his Georgia tax execution, the collective consensus was that Ross had dropped the ball. But the unpolished, unedited nature of Ross's live stream changed the rules of engagement. By introducing actual corporate schedules, municipal lease agreements, and bank discovery records into a space usually reserved for low-resolution memes, Ross bypassed the casual gossip mongers and invited the internet's amateur forensic accountants to the table. The immediate fallout was not defined by emotional outbursts or typical rap beef hyperbole. It was defined by a sudden, intense public interest in corporate finance. Within hours, independent financial analysts and hip-hop commentators began pulling up public records to verify Ross's claims. The debate was no longer about who had the better verses or who possessed more street credibility. It was a cold, calculated dissection of debt-to-equity ratios and municipal real estate structures. The public was forced to look at 50 Cent's highly publicized Shreveport, Louisiana studio facility through a sterile, legalistic lens. For months, 50 had been riding a wave of local and national press, presenting himself as a self-made studio tycoon who is single-handedly transforming a forgotten municipal giant into a southern Hollywood. But the documents Ross displayed acted like a solvent on a cheap paint job. They revealed that the grand acquisition of the studio was not a purchase of land and brick, but rather a heavily subsidized leasehold agreement with the city of Shreveport. In the sophisticated world of commercial real estate, a subsidized lease is a brilliant tax shelter and a low-risk move, But in the unforgiving court of hip-hop public opinion, it was instantly framed as renting a trophy. Then came the strike that targeted the very crown jewel of 50 Cent's modern identity, the power television universe. For a decade, Curtis Jackson has used his television success to position himself entirely above the rap economy, presenting himself as a premium cable kingmaker. But the corporate flowcharts Ross revealed shed light on the harsh realities of television IP ownership. The legal truth was laid bare. Starz and Lionsgate own the keys to the vault. They own the characters, the brand, and the intellectual property. 50 Cent is a highly compensated creator and a brilliant producer, but he is ultimately a salaried contractor. If the network decides to sever ties, the empire remains in their vault, not his. This revelation divided the internet into deeply tribal factions. G-Unit loyalists scrambled to explain the basic principles of leverage, arguing that using municipal debt and network backing is how modern billionaires build empires without risking their own capital. But Ross's supporters countered with a simpler, more visceral truth. A true boss does not answer to a municipal landlord, and a true boss does not have his private balance sheets read aloud like a foreclosure notice on a humid Tuesday afternoon. The unedited stream stripped away the protective sheen of 50 Cent's public relations machinery, leaving the master of online humiliation momentarily silent, as the internet began to realize that the grand illusion of the G-Unit empire might finally have a crack in its foundation. To understand the sheer magnitude of the devastation Rick Ross unleashed on that unedited live stream, we have to travel back to 2008, an era when hip-hop was experiencing a profound tectonic shift. The old rules of engagement, once governed by physical street territory and back-alley altercations, were being rapidly dismantled. In their place, a new, far more insidious arena was emerging: the digital narrative war. It was no longer enough to be a formidable lyricist. One had to be an exceptional brand strategist. And in this brave new world, Curtis Jackson and William Leonard Roberts, too, were destined to lock eyes across a crowded room and spark a fire that is still burning nearly 2 decades later. The catalyst was deceptively simple: a perceived look of dismissive indifference at the 2008 BET Hip Hop Awards. 50 Cent, then sitting at the absolute zenith of his G-Unit empire, culturally bulletproof and backed by Eminem and Dr. Dre, allegedly looked right through Ross. For a rising star whose entire persona was built on the unshakable premise of absolute respect, that cold glance was an intolerable declaration of war. What followed was not a traditional exchange of lyrical sparring partners. It was a masterclass in asymmetrical character assassination. 50 Cent bypassed the recording booth and went straight for Ross's biography. He unearthed a truth that, by all traditional metrics of hip-hop credibility, should have instantly ended Ross's career. Official records proving Ross had previously worked as a correctional officer in a Florida prison. In an era still heavily bound to the authentic street kingpin mythology, this was the ultimate betrayal. 50 did not just release the information. He weaponized it into a multimedia campaign. He created cartoon parodies of Officer Ricky, conducted highly publicized interviews with the mother of Ross's child, Tia Kemp, and held up prison guard badges on national television. But Ross did something completely unprecedented in the history of the genre. He simply refused to fold. Instead of retreating, Ross leaned heavier into the myth. He officially branded himself as the biggest boss, signed hungry, street-validated talent like Meek Mill, and built Maybach Music Group into an empire. He proved to the industry that in the digital age, a brilliantly performed myth is infinitely more powerful than a documented biography. Yet, the parallel histories of these two men run far deeper than their public battles. The very monuments they built to assert their dominance are haunted by the same financial vulnerabilities. Take, for instance, Rick Ross's legendary Fayetteville mansion, the Promised Land. This 109-room megastructure, sitting on over 300 acres of Georgia countryside, was originally built in the 1990s as Villa Vittoriosa by heavyweight boxing champion Evander Holyfield. It was a physical manifestation of Holyfield's massive athletic triumphs. But Holyfield soon discovered that a 54,000-square-foot palace carries a financial gravity of its own. Between a $10 million mortgage that ballooned to $14 million, crushing child support payments, and relentless IRS debt, the estate became a luxury-lined prison. By 2012, J.P. Morgan Chase repossessed the property in a highly publicized foreclosure. When Ross purchased the estate out of those financial ruins in 2014 for $5.9 million, it was framed as the ultimate triumph, the former correctional officer buying the palace of a heavyweight king. But the ghost of Holyfield's financial ruins still lingers over those rolling hills. As 50 Cent dryly observed years later, a property that costs more to maintain than an operating nightclub is not an asset. It is a beautifully manicured black hole, waiting for the owner's cash flow to falter. While Ross was navigating the delicate economics of his Georgia palace, 50 Cent was facing his own financial reckoning. In 2015, Curtis Jackson filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was a moment of supreme irony that Ross's camp celebrated as a definitive victory. But the truth behind 50's bankruptcy was a highly calculated legal maneuver. Staring down a $5 million jury verdict for leaking a highly sensitive video involving Lastonia Leviston, who was dating Ross at the time, and a staggering $17.2 million judgment for a failed headphone venture with sleek audio, 50 used the federal bankruptcy court to restructure his debt, freeze his liabilities, and shield his personal fortune. 50 Cent testified under oath that his actual net worth was a fraction of his public projection, forcing the world to see the difference between the get-rich-or-die-tryin' icon and the heavily structured corporate entities that actually managed his wealth. Yet, much like Ross, 50 survived. He rebuilt his fortune around the highly lucrative Power television universe and his G-Unit film and TV production banner, rebranding himself as a sophisticated Hollywood producer. For 15 years, these two men have navigated parallel paths of spectacular triumphs and heavily shielded financial crises. They are two master illusionists who have successfully convinced the world of their absolute financial invincibility, even while navigating tax liens, foreclosures, and massive legal judgments. But by holding those unredacted corporate discovery documents up to a live camera on a random afternoon, Ross did something far more damaging than calling 50 Cent a snitch or a liar. He reminded the world that behind the diamond-encrusted chains and the television executive credits, both of them are still subject to the cold, unyielding laws of the ledger. This is where we must abandon the theater of social media and enter the sterile, unforgiving world of corporate accounting, lease agreements, and debt-to-equity structures. To understand why Rick Ross's live stream did not just sting 50 Cent, but actually threatened to compromise his commercial credibility, we have to look at the exact financial mechanics of what was exposed. In the modern entertainment economy, there is a massive, carefully guarded chasm between being a wealthy individual and being a sovereign corporate entity. One relies on a fee-for-service model, the other operates on direct equity ownership. Let us start with the cornerstone of 50 Cent's modern business narrative, the grand expansion of G-Unit film and television into Shreveport, Louisiana. For months, Curtis Jackson's public relations machinery painted a picture of absolute municipal conquest. The headlines shouted that the G-Unit General had taken over a massive, state-of-the-art studio facility to build a southern Hollywood. But when Rick Ross slid those municipal contracts out of his manila folder and held them up to the camera, he exposed a legal reality that any corporate attorney would have read. Lined in an instant, Jackson did not buy Millennium Studios. His production company signed a 30-year lease with the city of Shreveport for a property the city itself purchased for $3.8 million in 2022. While the highly publicized annual rent of $2,400 sounds like a masterclass in negotiation, the fine print of that leasehold agreement tells a far more draining story. Under the terms of the contract, G-Unit is fully responsible for all operational costs, capital expenditures, and ongoing maintenance of a massive, aging concrete facility. The arrangement immediately saves the city of Shreveport nearly $180,000 a year in upkeep, effectively shifting a massive real estate liability directly onto G-Unit's balance sheet. If the sound stages sit dark, if the production slate slows down, if the local tax incentives shift, Curtis Jackson remains legally and financially on the hook for the bleeding overhead of a giant, empty municipal white elephant. Red River Radio +1. Ross then directed his surgical sarcasm toward the very engine of 50 Cent's modern wealth, his legendary tenure with the Starz television network. For years, 50 has walked through the world with the unshakable confidence of a media mogul, boasting about his historic $150 million deal to develop the Power universe and its successful spin-offs. But Ross held up the corporate flowcharts that exposed the structural limits of this television empire. In September 2022, Jackson's overall production deal with Starz officially ended. In a series of frantic, now-deleted social media posts leading up to that exit, Jackson openly admitted his frustration, writing that he was desperately trying to buy his universe back from Starz so it could travel with him. Revolt TV +3. But he couldn't, because in the legacy model of television production, G-Unit Film and Television was never the owner. They were merely a hired production vendor. Starz and its parent company, Lionsgate, own the underlying intellectual property, the copyrights, the character rights, and the master distribution tapes. Jackson was a highly compensated executive producer and actor, earning lucrative episodic fees and back-end points, but he possessed zero equity in the actual IP. When his contract expired, the Power universe stayed behind in the Starz vault. He was, in the cold terminology of corporate law, a glorified tenant farmer on land owned by Wall Street. Reddit +1. Ross contrasted this corporate dependency with his own model of direct, sovereign equity. While 50 Cent's wealth is tied up in complex, illiquid network licensing agreements and leveraged municipal leases, Ross's business portfolio is aggressively direct-to-consumer and heavily cash flow positive. He owns a sprawling network of over 25 physical Wingstop franchise locations. These are not speculative investments. They are cash-generating, high-margin brick-and-mortar operations that pay daily dividends regardless of Hollywood writer strikes or network contract disputes. His partnerships with sovereign brands like Luc Belair are structured not as simple endorsement deals, but as active equity stakes where Ross directly participates in the appreciated valuation of the parent company's liquid portfolio. To drive the point home, Ross opened the deepest wound in the catalog, the ownership of 50 Cent's master recordings. The cultural weight of Get Rich or Die Trying is undisputed, but the legal ownership of those masters resides permanently in the corporate vaults of Interscope and Universal Music Group. For every dollar the album generates on modern streaming platforms, Curtis Jackson receives an artist royalty percentage, while the lion's share of the passive equity flow goes to corporate shareholders who have never held a microphone. By utilizing actual legal discovery documents to parse the difference between appearing rich and possessing true structural autonomy, Rick Ross did not just win a round of online banter. He held up a mirror to the entire illusion of the G-Unit empire, showing a mature, sophisticated audience that the master of social media humiliation was, at his core, highly dependent on the very corporate gatekeepers he claimed to have outsmarted. To truly appreciate the nature of this digital execution, one must step away from the cash flow charts and enter the muddy, chaotic arena of pure psychological warfare. In the high-stakes economy of modern celebrity, your brand is not just a commercial tool, it is a psychological fortress. And in this particular theater of war, Curtis Jackson has reigned for over 15 years as an apex predator. His strategy has always been simple yet devastating. Identify your opponent's deepest insecurity, drag it into the public square, and mock it until it becomes their defining trait. 50 Cent does not seek to win arguments. He seeks to destroy his rival's sanity. He has historically weaponized domestic disputes, child support hearings, and leaked personal videos, converting raw human vulnerability into highly engaging viral content. If you react with anger, you feed the troll. If you react with silence, you concede defeat. For years, Rick Ross attempted to survive this psychological onslaught by acting as a human shield of pure luxury. Every time 50 Cent threw a social media grenade, Ross simply bought another Rolls-Royce, hosted another lavish pool party, or bragged about another Wingstop franchise. It was a classic defense mechanism, an attempt to outflex the humiliation. But 50 Cent's genius lay in his uncanny ability to twist those very flexes into proof of financial strain. When Ross posted videos of himself proudly mowing his own grass on his sprawling estate, 50 didn't see a self-made man enjoying his land. He saw a man who couldn't afford to pay a landscaping crew. It was a brilliant piece of psychological framing. In the court of public opinion, a multimillionaire cutting his own lawn is an eccentric hobbyist. A leveraged debtor doing it is a squatter desperately trying to save on basic overhead. But on that fateful afternoon, when Ross tapped the live stream button, he executed a psychological counterstrike of breathtaking precision. Ross understood that the only way to disarm an apex bully is to strip away his mask of absolute superiority. He didn't try to out-troll 50 Cent with childish memes. Instead, he did something far more damaging. He patronized him. By holding up those unredacted corporate and municipal records, Ross reframed the entire G-Unit narrative. He didn't make 50 Cent look poor. He made him look common. He made him look like a highly paid corporate employee who still has to report to a board of directors, lease his property from the city, and ask permission from Hollywood executives to use his own intellectual property. The ultimate peak of this psychological theater was Ross's sarcastic, poolside offer of a business partnership. Relaxing in his massive pool, Ross spoke directly to 50 Cent not as an angry rival, but as a wealthy, sympathetic benefactor. He offered to sit down with 50 to look over his Shreveport studio renderings, offering him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to secure funding from a true, liquid boss. This was pure, concentrated psychological venom. By positioning himself as the magnanimous billionaire offering financial charity to a struggling independent producer, Ross turned 50 Cent's entire master businessman identity on its head. He delivered the final blow with a tone of performative sadness, saying that when his legal team pulled up 50's actual bank accounts during discovery, he didn't feel angry. He actually felt bad for him. Humiliation can be fought with anger, but pity is terminal. By expressing performative sympathy for 50 Cent's financial structures, Ross stripped away the psychological leverage that made the G-Unit general so terrifying to his peers, proving that the master of online torture was himself highly vulnerable to a simple, factual inspection of his real-world plumbing. As we step back from the digital battleground and look at the quiet aftermath of this latest skirmish, we are left with a deeper, more profound realization. This is no longer just a petty feud about budget airlines, unpaid taxes, or municipal lease agreements. It has become a permanent, self-sustaining ecosystem, a brilliant, cynical, perpetual motion machine of modern digital relevance. The great, unacknowledged irony of this entire saga is that despite their deep personal animosity, Rick Ross and 50 Cent are locked in a tight, symbiotic embrace. They are two halves of the same cultural currency. 50 Cent's surgical trolling keeps Rick Ross's boss persona sharp, forcing him to constantly defend his crown with grander displays of luxury. Meanwhile, Rick Ross's unshakable, opulent resilience provides 50 Cent with his ultimate, most compelling target, a rival worthy of his dark, strategic genius. They do not actually want this war to end, because the war itself is their most valuable intellectual property. In the digital age, conflict is not a distraction from the business. Conflict is the business. Every live stream, every leaked tax document, and every calculated poolside video generates millions of impressions, thousands of articles, and a massive spike in streaming numbers. They have successfully commodified their mutual hatred, turning a personal grudge into a multi-million-dollar entertainment franchise. But behind the theater, this feud holds up a fascinating mirror to the changing nature of the American dream, and specifically, the hip-hop dream of absolute financial independence. We're forced to look at two entirely different philosophies of wealth, both carrying their own unique structural flaws. On one side, you have the Curtis Jackson paradigm, a master of corporate leverage, a man who survived bankruptcy by using the federal court system as a shield, and who built a massive television empire by licensing his brand to corporate giants like Starz and municipal governments like Shreveport. It is a highly sophisticated, debt-leveraged, institutional model of wealth. But as Ross elegantly pointed out, it is a model that is deeply dependent on corporate gatekeepers, municipal landlords, and complex network licensing structures. It is the wealth of a highly compensated, incredibly powerful executive, but an executive nonetheless. On the other side, you have the William Leonard Roberts model, a cash flow heavy, direct-to-consumer, sovereign empire. Ross does not rely on television networks or municipal subsidies to maintain his lifestyle. He relies on physical Wingstop franchises, direct equity stakes in liquor brands, and the appreciation of 300 acres of prime Georgia soil. It is a model of raw, liquid independence. But it is also a model that is constantly threatened by the massive, bleeding overhead of a 109-room white elephant and the recurring specter of government tax collectors. Neither man is the pure, unblemished version of what he performs to the public. 50 Cent is not the untouchable, billion-dollar business genius who owns everything he touches. He is a highly skilled contractor operating within the strict boundaries of corporate contracts. Rick Ross is not the absolute, untouchable cartel boss who never answers to anyone. He is an entrepreneur constantly balancing the high-wire act of liquid cash flow against the staggering costs of his own mythology. And so, as the digital dust settles on this latest unedited live stream, we're left with a question that goes to the very heart of modern economic power. In an economy where attention is the ultimate currency and ownership is the ultimate shield, who actually won this debate? Is the real big boss the man who holds the direct, liquid cash flow of brick-and-mortar franchises and sits poolside on his own sovereign land? Or is it the master corporate strategist who leverages other people's money, municipal tax incentives, and network conglomerates to build a massive, institutional legacy? The ledger is open, and the numbers do not lie. Let us know who you think holds the real power in the comments below, and let the debate begin.